Dear students, today we will discuss something about ecosystem structure, its biotic and abiotic components and ecological pyramids. The main objectives of today's lecture are to gain knowledge about ecosystem structure, to gain knowledge about food chain and food web, to develop awareness about ecological pyramids. An ecosystem is defined as a dynamic complex of plant, animal and microorganism communities and the non-living environment which are interacting as a functional unit. Within the ecosystem exists a complex and dynamic set of relationships among these organisms and between them and their physical environment. Ecosystems can be as large or as small as we decide. Ecosystems are defined by the network of interactions among organisms and between organisms and their environment. The concept of ecosystem was first put forth by A.G. Tansley in 1935. Now, the components of ecosystem. Structurally, an ecosystem consists of two components, namely abiotic components and biotic components. These components are linked together through nutrient cycles and energy flow. Now, first abiotic components. Abiotic components include the physical factors of the environment which are non-living and have a major influence on the life of organisms. The abiotic components are of two types, namely climatic factors and edaphic factors. First, climatic factors. The climate of an area is the result of several factors such as latitude, elevation, nearness to the sea and monsoon activities and ocean currents. Climatic factors include temperature, rainfall and snow, wind, light, humidity, etc. First important climatic factor is the temperature. Temperature influences the rates of biochemical reactions in plants, with the reaction rates approximately doubling with every 10 degree Celsius increase. Plant species can exist over a definite range of temperature. Below a minimum, they are inactive, and above a maximum temperature, biochemical reactions stop. Normally, in many plants, growth is possible above 6 degrees centigrade. To survive in areas with extremes of temperature such as tundra and tropical deserts, the plants have developed various mechanisms to adapt to such conditions. Now, the second important climatic factor is light. Light is an important factor controlling the growth of plants as it determines the rate of photosynthesis reactions. Different plants have their characteristic light requirements in respect of light intensity, duration and wavelength. Some plants which are called heliophytes require high levels, whereas xeophytes can grow in shady, low light conditions. Now, the third climatic factor is water. Water is an essential factor for biochemical plant processes including photosynthesis. Plants growing on lands obtain their water requirements from the soil through their roots. Hydrophytes grow in fresh water and they cannot withstand drought. Xerophytes, on the other hand, survive long periods of drought, and halophytes are able to survive in saline water. Mesophytes require moderate conditions, neither waterlogged nor drought, and are found mainly in temperate areas. Now, the second class of abiotic components is the edaphic factors or soil factors. Soil is the major source of nutrients and moisture in almost all the land ecosystems. Soil is formed when a rock weathers. The rocks break down into a collection of different inorganic or mineral particles. The climate influences the type and rate of the weathering of the rocks as well as the nature of the vegetation growing on it. Nutrients are recycled in the soil by the plants and animals in their life cycles of growth, death and decomposition. Soil factors include mineral, organic matter, soil texture, soil microorganisms, pH, etc. The first edaphic factor is the soil mineral matter. It is derived from the weathering of rock material. These consist of two types. First, stable primary materials like quartz, and second, various secondary materials like clays and oxides of aluminum and iron. The second edaphic factor is the soil texture. Soil texture is determined by the size of mineral particles, which may vary from fine clay to coarse gravel. The varying percentages of each size range produce soils with different characteristics supporting different vegetation. Next edaphic factor is soil organic matter. Soil organic matter is also called humus. It is formed by the decomposition of plant and animal matter. The rate of decay depends upon the nature of the material and the climate. The humus produced and incorporated into the soil plays an important role in determining the soil texture. Next edaphic factor is the soil organisms. An important component of soil is the wealth of below ground organisms that are vital for the normal functioning of an ecosystem. These organisms carry out many important processes such as decomposition of organic material, such as plant and animal parts by bacteria, fungi, actinomycetes and earthworms. Bacteria and fungi also break down soil mineral matter, generating nutrients. Microbes, particularly bacteria, also carry out transformation and fixation of nitrogen, which is an essential plant nutrient obtained through rainwater or from nitrogen gas in the air. Some types of bacteria have the ability to transform pesticides and herbicides into less toxic compounds. Now, next class of edaphic factors is the soil chemical and colloidal properties. Soils are chemically different from the rocks and minerals from which they are formed, in that soils contain less of the water soluble weathering products calcium, magnesium, sodium and potassium, and more of the relatively insoluble elements such as iron and aluminum. The soil colloids are the most active portion of the soil and largely determine the physical and chemical properties of a soil. Inorganic colloids such as clay minerals, hydrous oxides usually make up the bulk of soil colloids. Colloids are particles less than 0.001 millimeter in size, and the clay fraction includes particles less than 0.002 millimeter in size. The organic colloids include highly decomposed organic matter, generally called humus. Organic colloids are more reactive chemically and generally have a greater influence on soil properties per unit weight than the inorganic colloids. Another important attribute of soil is its pH, which indicates the level acidity or alkalinity of the soil. pH is the concentration of hydrogen ions in the soil. pH determines availability of elements. It is measured on a scale from 0 to 14, with 7 being neutral. A pH value of greater than 7 indicates alkalinity, while a value less than 7 indicates acidity. Now, the biotic components. The biotic components of an ecosystem comprises plants, animals and microorganisms, including bacteria and fungi. They carry out different functions, and based on their role, they are classified into 3 main groups. 1. Producers, 2. Consumers, 3. Decomposers. Now, the first, producers. Producers are mainly green plants having chlorophyll. In addition to green plants, photosynthetic bacteria also act as producers. They produce carbohydrates by photosynthesis process. In effect, the plants convert solar energy into chemical energy using water and carbon dioxide. These are called autotrophs since they produce their own food. Part of the food produced by the autotrophs are utilized for their own consumption for survival and growth, while the remaining is stored in the plant parts for future consumption. In addition to photosynthetic plants and bacteria, there are several groups of chemosynthetic bacteria in marine and freshwater environments, particularly those rich in sulfur or hydrogen sulfide gas, which can convert inorganic nutrients to organic compounds without the presence of sunlight and thus act as producers. Now, the consumers. Consumers are living things which do not have chlorophyll, and hence they are unable to produce their own food. They rely on the producers for their food requirements. Consumers are also called heterotrophs. Consumers are classified into 4 categories. They are primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers and quaternary consumers. Primary consumers are herbivores. They are also called first order consumers. They eat the producers or plants. Examples are cattle like cow and goat, deer, rabbit, etc. Secondary consumers are primary carnivores. They are also called second order consumers. They eat herbivores. Examples are snakes, cats, foxes, etc. Tertiary consumers. They are also called third order consumers. They feed on secondary consumers. They are large carnivores. Example is wolf. Quaternary consumers. They are also called fourth order consumers. They are very large carnivores and feed on tertiary consumers and are not consumed by other animals. Examples are lions and tigers. Now, the decomposers. Decomposers, called as saprotrophs, are mainly microorganisms including bacteria, fungi and invertebrates. The dead organic materials of producers and consumers are their food. They break down the organic matter into simple compounds during their metabolic process. These simple compounds are nutrients which are absorbed by the producers, thus completing a cyclic exchange of matter between biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem. Now, dear students, let us discuss something about food chain. A food chain is a chain of organisms existing in an ecosystem through which food, energy and matter are transferred. Each link in a food chain feeds on and gets energy from the one preceding it and in turn eaten by the one succeeding it. The food chains are of two types, namely grazing food chain and detritus food chain. Now first the grazing food chain. The grazing food chain starts from green plants and ends in carnivores. This type of food chain begins from autotroph plants which synthesize organic food by capturing the energy from solar radiation. The green plants are then eaten by herbivores which in turn are eaten by carnivores. Most of the ecosystems in nature follow this type of food chain. The second food chain, that is detritus food chain. This type of food chain goes from dead organic matter into microorganisms and then to organisms feeding on detritus and their predators. The organisms which feed exclusively on the dead bodies of animals and plants are called detrivores. It includes bacteria, fungi, protozoans, etc. These organisms ingest and digest the dead organic materials and convert it into carbon dioxide and water. The decomposers are preyed upon by several small animals including protozoans. These animals are eaten and re-eaten by detritus consumers which are in turn eaten by small carnivores which in turn serve as food for large, that is top carnivores. Now food web. In an ecosystem, the linear food chains do not operate as isolated sequences and the food does not always pass from one population to other in a linear sequence. Instead, various food chains are interconnected with each other to form a network. A net-like interlocking of different food chains by forming interconnections at various trophic levels is called food web. Food webs are very important in maintaining the stability of an ecosystem. For example, in grassland ecosystem, grasses are eaten by grasshoppers, rabbit and mouse. Grasshopper is eaten by garden lizard which is eaten by hawk. In addition, hawk also directly eats grasshopper and mouse. In this way, an interlocking pattern of food web is constructed which is different from linear food chain. Some ecosystems are simple as being characterized by a single unbranched food chain while others are complex with complex interrelationships between organisms in the form of food webs. A simple measure of the relative complexity of a food web can be described by a measure known as chain length, which denotes the average number of links between trophic levels. For example, if there are 3 trophic levels, that is plants, a herbivore and a carnivore, there are 2 links between the 3 species, then the chain length is said to be 2. The second measure is connectance, which is given by the ratio of actual number of links and potential number of links. In an ecosystem of n species, the number of potential links is given by following formula. The number of potential links is equal to the number of species multiplied by the number of species minus 1 whole divided by 2. The third measure of complexity is the number of links per species, called the linkage density. Linkage density is equal to actual number of links divided by number of species. Now the last part of this lecture is the ecological pyramids. Ecological pyramids are graphic representation of the relationships among successive trophic levels of a food chain in terms of their number, biomass and energy content. These are actually bar diagrams in which the quantities of parameter at each trophic level are indicated by the length of bar, where the producer level constitutes the base of the pyramid, top carnivore at the top and other consumers forming intermediate tiers. The use of ecological pyramid was first described by Charles Elton in 1927. There are three types of ecological pyramids, namely pyramid of numbers, pyramid of biomass and pyramid of energy. Now first, pyramid of number. It is a graphic representation of the number of individual organisms at successive trophic levels of a food chain. The base of the pyramid is occupied by the number of producers, with top carnivores at the top and other consumers forming the intermediate tiers. In most of the cases, such as grassland and pond ecosystems, the pyramid of number is upright. In a forest ecosystem, pyramid of number is spindle shaped. In this case, the producers, that is trees, at the base of pyramid are lesser in number. The next trophic level consists of herbivores, which are more in number as compared to producers. The successive carnivores and finally top carnivore gradually decrease in number. In case of a parasitic food chain where a single tree is taken as producer, the pyramid of number is inverted, as a single plant acting as producer supports a large population of parasites, which in turn support large numbers of hyperparasites. Second, the pyramid of biomass. The pyramid of biomass shows the relationship of populations supported at each successive trophic level in terms of biomass. Biomass refers to the total weight of living matter and is measured both as fresh or dry weight. In case of forest and grassland ecosystems, the biomass decreases from the producer level to the consumer level, and as such the shape of pyramid is upright. However, in case of aquatic ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass is inverted, as the phytoplanktons, that is producers, are having least biomass. The biomass of successive carnivores, small fishes and top carnivores, for example shark, is always more. Now the last type of pyramid, that is pyramid of energy. The pyramid of energy depicts the rate of energy flow and or productivity at successive trophic levels. It is always upright, as energy is always lost during transfer from one trophic level to another. Thus, less and less energy becomes available at successive higher trophic levels. The producers, that is green plants and phytoplanktons, obtain energy from sun and convert this solar energy into chemical energy stored in their biomass. The producers provide energy to herbivores, which in turn provide energy to carnivores. The energy gradually decreases towards the top consumer level, as some energy is always lost during its transfer from one trophic level to another. Dear students, I hope you have understood this topic. Thank you.